Welcome back to Movie Explain Pro. Today I will show you an activity, parody, science fiction film from 2018 named Super Lopez. Spoilers ahead. Look out and fare thee well. In a cosmic system far away, planet Chitin lives under the fascism of fiendish Admiral Scorba. One night, famed researcher Jan and his significant other have a child that he's been testing with throughout recent months, making him a definitive weapon to save their planet. Be that as it may, Scorba has found out about this and is presently rapidly moving toward their research facility. Since concealing the child would just postpone his catch, Jan acknowledges he has no other decision and places him in a little shuttle that he ships off the USA on Earth. After the child is gone, Scorba shows up with his girl Agata, who guesses what Jan might be thinking and finds how he's managed the child. Scorba gives her a mission then. At that point, she should accept the other shuttle and follow the child. To catch him, Agata does as requested. However, when they are going to show up at Earth, the child's boat crashes against a satellite, making it head in a different direction, while Agata proceeds with the excursion to the USA. The child lands in Spain's open country. 2 or 3 tracks down the child and chooses to take on him regardless of whether they track down his mustache. Very abnormal. They call him Juan Lopez and bring him back home with them along with the rocket, which they conceal in the carport. As they start living with Juan, they learn before long that this kid has uncommon capacities other than making the mustache return at whatever point they shave it. He has super strength, super speed, X-beam vision, and freeze breath among others. Sadly, at whatever point he shows these capacities, individuals would think of him as a misfit. What's more, when he turns 10, he hasn't made a solitary companion. His folks let him know he would have been valued and regarded in different nations. However, in Spain, to fit in he should be average and play imagine. 20 years pass after his 10th birthday celebration, and Juan is currently living alone in the enormous city and keeps his powers stowed away. One morning, his closest companion and manager Jaime Gonzalez Leidenbrock awakens him through the telephone, requesting to know why he isn't working yet. Juan imagines he is as of now at the workplace and utilizations his super speed to wash, change, and race to the workplace, showing up at his work area before Jaime can get onto his falsehood. Meddling as a companion, Jaime lets Juan know that he's recruited another worker that he believed he had a few flashes with during the 8 meetings he called her for. Since he erroneously accepts, meetings can rise to dates. At the point when he specifies he needs to set up her a welcome party, which this office never accomplishes for new representatives, Juan won't take an interest and passes around his work area to eat. At the point when somebody rings the ringer, he utilizes his X-beam vision to find the new representative is Luisa. Lana's a close buddy of Juan from college. He opens the entryway for her, glad to learn she actually recollects that him, and winds up welcoming her to the little invite party he unexpectedly has altered his perspective on. Subsequent to working hours are finished, they set up the little party, which turns out to be simply Juan, Luisa, Jaime, and 2 janitors that Jaime is making stay forcibly. At the point when Luisa pardons herself to go to the restroom, Juan utilizes his super hearing to pay attention to the discussion she's having on the telephone with a companion, referencing how she's creeped out by the manner in which Jaime continues to go on to her. However, she's happy Juan is there too. This rouses Juan not to leave the party when Jaime asks him to with the goal of being distant from everyone else with her. Yet when Juan pauses for a minute to go to the kitchen and utilize his freeze breath on the faucet water to make ice for their beverages, Luisa leaves. Not surrendering yet, Juan utilizes his super speed and finds Luisa at the metro station, where they consent to get pizza together. At the eatery, they're having a decent talk when a gathering of repulsive young people shows up. Also, begin making heaps of commotion while playing pool. Luisa faces them and occasion hits one with her tote when they affront her, yet the young people just chuckle at them and even make Juan fall by playing an old stunt where one of them would slither behind him without him seeing and different pushes him over with simply a finger. This baffles Juan. However, he fails to address it to safeguard his personality. Minutes after the fact, while trusting that the metro will return home, he ponders what his dad has shown him and contemplates whether it genuinely merits remaining stowed away when abruptly, the metro train passes by all the way wild. In the wake of seeing a sign with a promotion for Chit that says today is the ideal day to take that initial step, Juan hops on the tracks and uses his super speed to show up at the following station before the train does. Nonetheless, when he attempts to stop it, his solidarity demonstrates not to be sufficient, and the train just hauls him away with it. Juan utilizes his super speed again to arrive at the last station and makes a boundary with the crisis fire hose, which figures out how to push the train back when it shows up and forestalls an accident from occurring. After the risk is finished, everybody in the station gazes at Juan, who takes a cap from an irregular traveler to cover his face as he runs out of there. The following day, the fresh insight about a man halting a tram train arrives at the Spanish news. Yet, they likewise arrive at a now grown-up Agatha Muller, who is still in the USA functioning as the CEO of CHIT, the greatest electronic organization on the planet. She's searched constantly for Juan, and now that she at last understands, she and her multitude of robot clones will travel to Spain to track down him. In the interim, at the workplace, the representatives are likewise examining the Metro story, with the exception of Louisa. In the wake of remarking on the reality James keeps on showing unpleasant way of behaving, similar to the reality he's currently printed 500 business cards with her name. She gives Juan one while remarking on the reality she thinks a Spanish hero would be extremely lamentable in light of the fact that superheroes ought to be American, English or Japanese, maybe even German. After they consent to go out for supper together once more, their discussion is interfered with by an envious James that remarks on the reality the popular Agatha is coming to Spain to meet the puzzling tram legend. This makes Louisa considerably more certain that the entire situation is simply an exposure stunt. Anxious to get back to her home planet, Agatha calls her dad to let him know she's seen as Jan's child and that her innovation is in each family of the world, controlling everything. Scorba, nonetheless, is exceptionally pompous of her for having required a long time to gain any sort of headway and tells her he'll possibly accept it when he sees it. Meanwhile, Juan is on a transport en route to meet Louisa when unexpectedly a killing migraine begins bobbing in his mind as a pitching sound makes his ears hurt. It's Agatha, straightforwardly talking into his psyche to advise him to come see her at the CHIT building. Adequately inquisitive to need to know what's happening, Juan goes to said building, where he's welcomed to the CEO's office to eat with Agatha. She lets Juan know that he's an outsider like her and that she could bring him back home among their individuals who won't pass judgment on him for his capacities. Juan doesn't trust her and attempts to leave, so Agatha, in the wake of guessing what he might be thinking and learning about his kind gestures for Louisa, sends her multitude of robot clones to stop him. Juan is certainly not a prepared warrior, yet because of his superpowers, he just has to thrash around to overcome the robots, who are no counterpart for him. There's a ton of them, however, and they come constantly, so when the robots push him to the ground and structure a heap on top of him, Juan slips away from them and takes the lift to leave at last. Agatha doesn't surrender, be that as it may, and when she finds she's failed to remember his coat, she looks inside his pockets and finds Louisa's business card, giving her the data she wants for her next plan. Since CHIT innovation is all over the place, it's simple for her to deal with the cleaning robot they have at Juan's office, and she utilizes it to take a DNA test from Louisa's cup. Then, at that point, the robot interfaces itself to a PC to send her this data, and the commotions stand out of James, who is burning the midnight oil. At the point when he sees the data being moved on the PC screen, he attempts to get the little robot just to get shocked by it. Then, at that point, the robot begins pursuing him through the workplace, uncovering it's been concealing bug-like legs, so James takes a coat rack and, in the wake of asking the janitors for help, the three of them start crushing the robot until it isn't working any longer. Tragically, it's past the point of no return. The DNA data has previously gotten done with moving. When they're finished, James attempts to call Louisa to caution her, yet she isn't getting the telephone. The other individual that is attempting to contact Louisa is Juan, who makes an appearance at her place and finds her approaching from the cafe totally smashed. He attempts to apologize and tells her he's had an insane evening, yet she flies off the handle when he can't uncover why and attempts to inspire him to go through the night with her. Juan declines, making sense if he can't exploit an alcoholic lady, yet when Louisa calls him a weakling, he basically gives her a decent kiss prior to leaving. The kiss has been seen from far off by James, who had accompanied the robot to caution Louisa. What's more, presently feels deceived by Juan. At that point, Agatha shows up in her van and subsequent to guessing what James might be thinking, she sees he's likewise infatuated with Louisa, which she can use as a component of her arrangement as well. Considering this lady is both Juan's and James' shortcoming, she's made a robot clone of her. Also, she guarantees James he can have the genuine one assuming he acknowledges to help her. The next day, Juan shows up at his folks' home and requests to know reality. From the beginning, they attempt to talk about something else. However, Juan demands and they in the end give in, admitting that indeed, he is without a doubt an outsider. And they even show him the space apparatus they've kept secret this time. At the point when Juan presses a button, a visualization of Jan shows up and continues to make sense of everything, finishing with a significant note. Juan is supposed to return and save Chitin from Scorba. Juan cares very little about being anyone's legend, regardless of how much his mom lets him know he's their main expectation. With the child sheet she finds inside the rocket, she makes a superhuman outfit for Juan, which incorporates a cape. Superheroes generally wear capes for flying. However, Juan doesn't know whether he can do that in front of the pack, so he goes to the top of the house and attempts to fly, just to right away fall on the ground. Thinking this has been an exercise in futility, Juan attempts to leave, and out and about, he comes across 3 youngsters that ridicule him for his garments. At the point when one of the young men gives him the center finger, Juan answers with the indication of the horns, which makes him begin suspending. As the adolescents take off in dread, Juan makes similar signal with his other hand, and this at last permits him to soar overhead. He have no control over it yet, however, so first, he falls on the Mallorca shore, and his second attempt drops him at Vizcaya. It's by the third attempt that he at long last receives the hang in return and he gets back, despite the fact that he can't resist the urge to enter it through the window. After his mom assists him with stowing away the supersuit under his garments, the Luisa robot shows up. To see him, Juan believes she's acting a piece bizarre yet thinks nothing yet, so he takes her to his space to talk in private. He lets her beginning and end know that has happened to him, and Julia, who is being controlled by Agata, acts exceptionally tolerating and attempts to persuade him to return to his planet and help his kin. However, Juan is as yet pondering the kiss they shared the previous evening and doesn't have any desire to leave her. So James, who is working with Agata, assumes control over the robot clone's controls and makes Luisa let Juan know that the kiss was horrendous and hitting on her had been a demonstration of double-crossing towards James. This gives Juan something to ponder and he concedes she's right. James has been the just companion he at any point has and he thinks often about him, so he ought to be more thoughtful. This contacts James profoundly, making him cry and not of any desire to cooperate with this arrangement any longer. So Agata moves on to Plan B. Robot Luisa kisses Juan then punches him previously, getting him and throwing him through the wall into the lounge. As she comes first floor as well, Juan battles to remove his regular citizen garments. Yet once he's finished, he draws in Robot Luisa in actual battle. The battle, from the start, is by all accounts pretty even. However, when Juan's mom occupies Luisa, Juan takes the risk and crushes her head off with a ham leg. Seeing as her arrangement has fizzled, Agata attempts to utilize James to get the genuine Luisa for her. Be that as it may, James would rather not help her any longer. Subsequent to guessing what he might be thinking and figuring out he's called Juan to caution him, Agata catches James. Also, starts contemplating her best course of action. In the meantime, Juan calls Luisa to gain proficiency with she's in Barcelona, so he flies there to meet her. By the Arc de Triomphe, he attempts to clarify everything for her, yet she doesn't trust him, so he begins taking off his regular citizen garments not too far off in that frame of mind of the recreation area to give her an exhibit. At the point when he's going to hover over the circular segment, in any case, he's come by a gathering of men dressed as popular animation characters that let him know that to work in that space he really wants authorization from their chief. At that point, a chit van shows up and grabs Luisa, yet Juan can't pursue her in light of the fact that the phony superheroes continue to hinder him. As the men attempt to pummel him, Juan battles with one more message from Agata to him, letting him know she has Luisa and he knows where to track down them. While moving around in torment, Juan evades several hits and the furious laborers end up battling one another, so he takes the risk to take off and go to the chit workplaces. There, he finds Luisa and James bound to a wall. They do whatever it takes not to get out of the lift since it's a snare. However, since they're shouting simultaneously, Juan can't comprehend them and gets bulldozed in any case. At the point when he attempts to help his companions, a bunch of monster speakers on the wall starts creating a very piercing sound that harms his super ears, tormenting him with horrendous torment. Contemplating how these scenes normally go in superhuman motion pictures, James tells Luisa to give him a discourse about the amount she enjoys him and trusts in him, yet it doesn't work. Jaime affronts Juan for being a disgraceful hero, and briefly there, Juan appears to recuperate. This shows that he's something contrary to the exemplary superhuman stories, and he responds better to affronts since he needs to refute them. So when Louisa sees this, she starts to affront each part of him, and soon Jaime joins her too. Because of their bent help, Juan figures out how to acquire some strength and obliterate a wall with his intensity vision. Then, at that point, he breaks their sleeves and takes them both flying with him to stow away at his parents' home. Agata doesn't see this on the surveillance cameras on the grounds that right now, Scorba shows up at Earth. He shows no interest in having a close-to-home get-together with his girl after so lengthy. He just needs to see Juan. At the point when Agata takes him to the fundamental chamber, they figure out they've gotten away. Scorba starts blustering and chiding Agata, saying he never figured she could get Juan, calling her futile, a shame for the family, and wanting to be his little girl. Burnt out on managing his harmfulness, Agata at last strides for her and disengages his oxygen tank, really killing him. She guesses what he might be thinking before he drops for good and sees he at long last is pleased with her for this contemptible demonstration before she assumes control over his drifting lofty position and prepares for a new plan. At the Lopez's home, Juan tells Louisa he would rather not be a superhuman and attempts to consume the supersuit, however it's made of a flame-resistant texture. At that point, Agata shows up in her dad's spaceship and slips utilizing the drifting privileged position, which she continues to change into a robot in the wake of telling Juan she's going to annihilate Earth. Juan hurries to put on his supersuit, which ends up being troublesome on the grounds that it's somewhat hot right now. His defer gives Agata future time nearer and point her robot at him. However, she's unexpectedly occupied by Juan's dad shooting his shotgun at her. Agata utilizes the robot's extraordinary arm to attempt to pull the man, and Juan attempts to forestall it. However, his hold on his dad's hand isn't sufficiently able to prevent the robot from sucking him in. Then, at that point, Agata hits Juan 2 or multiple times prior to throwing him away with such strength that he lands in a Barcelona match. While the 3 teens from prior appear and start recording everything, Juan comes back with the Barcelona objective net and tosses it at the robot with a dreadful point, getting his mom. All things considered, Agata attractions in the lady 2 prior to punching Juan to get him on the ground and trample him again and again. At the point when she takes out the electric saw to at last completion him, Jaime shows up before her to divert her, which is essential for an arrangement Louisa has persuaded him to do. As Agata pursues him and sucks him also, Louisa emerges from the carport driving the Lopez's truck. Her cries of assist with awakening Juan this time, and she requests that he pull a similar stunt the teens at the pizza put had done on him. She leaves the truck before the pool prior to taking off, and Juan punches the robot until it is perfectly positioned. After he tells Agata he is Super Lopez, he utilizes his freeze breath on the robot cockpit prior to pushing it over, making it stumble on the truck and fall in the water, which harms it destroyed. Juan's folks and Jaime emerge from the pool wet yet protected, yet in addition does Agata. Juan's mom advises him that his home planet is as yet sitting tight for his assistance, and Juan tells her not to stress since he has an arrangement. Days after the fact, Scorba's spaceship gets back to Chitin, conveying Agata and the phony hero from the recreation area that everybody accepts to be Juan and names him the new head of the planet. Back on Earth, Juan has turned into a legitimate hero. However, the press and the overall population don't like him without a doubt. He and Louisa have likewise started dating, in spite of the fact that Louisa is exceptionally baffled with Juan for consistently showing up later than expected due to all the superheroing he does. During one of their many dates at an eatery, the server lets them know somebody has as of now covered for their bill and focuses at a strange man by the bar that vanishes subsequent to calling Juan Super Lopez and letting him know he owes him one, just abandoning a pacifier. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more video like this.